Okay, hear me out. Codependency in a relationship is totally normal and even healthy. I know some of y'all are gonna come for me, but with so much dating advice going around for
Hi, my name is Dr. Alan Heide. I'm a therapist, but also just a normal dude. I've been treating things like codependency and the family dynamic for 15 years, and I can tell you flat out that codependency is not healthy. It's very destructive. I'm not going to come for this young lady as we break this down, but it is not helpful to engage in the dynamics around codependency and how that manifests in a relationship, no matter which way you slice it. Let's play the clip.
from one perspective. I really wanted to shed light on a different way to look at things and debunk the codependency myth.
So, codependency is not a myth. It may be more on TikTok and social media as a pop culture term that people use, but in the clinical realms and around the research, it's a term that we use to describe things like shame, underlying issues that are unresolved around spiritual, sexual, physical, or emotional traumas, real experiences of abandonment and neglect and fears of those things occurring. They are unresolved issues that create a symptom cluster that help us by utilizing a term codependency to describe very real experiences. It's by no means a myth. Let's play the clip again.
So modern dating advice sounds something like your happiness should come from within and you shouldn't be too dependent on a partner, with some advice even going so far as to say that if they do something to undermine your security in them, that you should be able to remove yourself from that situation. And if
You absolutely should be able to remove yourself from the situation. If you're struggling to do that, therapy is a wonderful tool to help you learn the skill we call detachment. When somebody's engaged in unhelpful or destructive or chaotic behaviors, wouldn't you know, research proves and shows that individuals don't like that. It's become comfortable through unresolved dynamics, and therapy helps you uncover those things, practice ways to detach from it, and get out of the way of other people's destructive and chaotic patterns. And by no means should you just stick in those things and hope that things get better. That would be a myth, is that your love will fix somebody. That's a myth. What's actual real research is that people don't like chaotic patterns, and therapy can help you break those patterns. We'll get back into the clip here now.
you can't, then you're codependent, which is borderline avoidant advice, by the way.
Borderline avoidant opinion. You know, we've got to be able to detach from people's behaviors. And one of the things that she says there is that it just automatically makes you a codependent. If you can't, that's a half truth, right? And we wouldn't want to use labels anyway. A label is utilized on the clinical side of things for documentation, insurance claims, things like that. There's a huge wave these days of trying to use terms to describe somebody's total experience. And this is the trap that TikTok and other social media set. We can let go of all of that and just know, hey, look, people are human beings and they have a hard time with destructive patterns and they need to be broken down, but not by calling these things a myth or twisting and contorting the information to fit our own narratives. But let's listen to some more.
Origins and teachings of codependency actually started as a way to help families deal with substance abuse.
This is just false information. It's become popular to use the term codependency as it pertains to the family disease of addiction to explain family and friends of alcoholics and drug addicts. But the term has been around for many years prior to it being used in the pop culture to describe that one dynamic. Instead of going into a historical breakdown, what I can really just kind of share with you is that the term codependency broken down into its components around shame and really complex dynamics of guilt around unresolved traumas, abandonment, and neglect has been around for a long time. It's been around a lot longer than the research has existed on the family disease of addiction. And it's not perpetuated by that. It's just one term that gets used in those settings, but by no means was it originated there. Let's see what else she has to say.
So when it's applied indiscriminately to healthy relationships, it's misleading and harmful. Also, biology tells a completely different story, and that is that codependency is natural and inevitable when forming an intimate relationship.
Oh, is that what biology says? These kind of things crack me up, right? Because there's no research, there's no breakdown on biological factors that describe codependency, which is a very destructive pattern, as something helpful and natural in the realm of intimacy. Building intimacy with a person is something that's become complicated in the discussions online. Intimacy is the process of into me see, the deep process of getting to know another person and feeling vulnerable and confident and brave enough in yourself to let someone else know who you are. Codependency is kind of the complete opposite of that when we look at dynamics of shame that cause us to internalize our issues, not share them with other people, and it causes conflict and problems in our life. So there is no natural, normal state of chaos and disorder in relationships that just naturally occurs between two people. They're usually very complex, very untreated dynamics that we tell ourselves are comfortable, and then we perpetuate them over and over again. So when I hear somebody say like, oh, codependency is just natural and normal, it's actually very abnormal, and it causes a lot of issues that people don't particularly like. Let's see what else she has to say.
And despite what people believe, it's not a choice or a preference. When two people form an intimate relationship, they just inevitably start regulating one another's psychological and emotional well-being.
As I try to track with her, I think what she's talking about is co-regulation. There are some areas where co-regulation can be important in a relationship, like when you're raising kids or building your finances or making decisions as a couple. But if you're relying on another person to regulate your emotions, this is a clear sign of unresolved, maybe trauma bonding. You've found a person who has the type of struggles that you identify with, relate to, and you're becoming a little bit enmeshed with the person. There's a lot of dynamics in there. I'm not going to kind of go in on her and say that that's what she's talking about, because we would just need more information. But what I would kind of hold up on this one is that um, you know waiting for somebody else in a relationship to help you calm your mood or to regulate yourself or to use skills that are helpful is a recipe for disaster. And to suggest in this video that that's something normal and healthy, I think is preposterous. Let's see what else she has to say.
Therefore, becoming dependent on one another. Where codependency can come in and become an issue is if that partner is not good for our psychological or emotional well-being. Because our partners do affect how we see and believe in ourselves. So if you choose a partner who's inconsistently emotionally available or supportive, then this is going to have a negative effect on your emotional and psychological well-being.
So some of what she's sharing there is true, right? Someone who's inconsistent or has a lot of patterns that are destructive is going to have an impact if you're engaging with them. And one of the ways that I put this is when you're practicing detachment, you have a friend who's engaged in a behavior that you don't like. If you don't detach and walk away from that, you're now co-signing that behavior. And I don't imagine you'd want to co-sign that behavior if it's uncomfortable for you. And so there's a lot of, I would say, half truths towards the end of the video here that she's sharing that just kind of get jumbled together, and word salad is like pop culture truths that you just like, oh, here's my advice on the internet. But the reality of the situation is that if you're engaged with somebody who is destructive or caught in chaotic patterns like substance use, abuse, verbal abuse, treating you poorly, expecting you to do for them what they can do for themselves as an adult, then you're going to find consequences in the relationship. This is not a myth. It's research proven, and you would need some professional help to break those patterns, or at least some kind of spiritual or moral guiding compass to pull you out of those things. And so, again, it's like she had some truths there that kind of sounded like truths, but she's really just kind of using big words that just don't make a whole lot of sense together. So then it just kind of sounds like empty positive feedback, which is fine. But when you wrap it in terms of codependency is a myth and it's a natural normal state, then we can't just kind of sit by and let it be like, oh, okay, maybe she has a point. She doesn't have a point. Now let's see how she ends the video.
And it's just going to stunt your growth. This kind of toxic idea that is perpetuated by society that we should be hyper self-sufficient is not new, but you need to keep in mind when taking dating advice that we do live in a society that for some reason scorns our basic and natural human needs for intimacy, dependency, and closeness.
So we've got my favorite buzzword that hops around the internet, toxic piece of advice. Don't turn to the internet for advice on your mental health. Reach out to a professional. Talk to a professional about these things. The internet and people like this who make these videos, they mean well. They obviously have some time on their hands to put together a video like this, but they don't know what they're talking about. And the word toxic in this situation, I'm sure she would see this and attribute my understandings over 15 years of working with codependency as a toxic way to look at it based on what she's sharing, except for the fact that I've sat in the room with tens of thousands of people over a 15-year career in different types of settings, whether it be family, individual, or even children, breaking down these dynamics and helping people find tools to implement them. There's nothing toxic about telling somebody to detach from somebody else's destructive behavior. It's necessary, it's helpful, and it'll help you live a more peaceful life. I hope this information helps. I by no means wanted to go in on this young lady, but when I hear information like this, I can't, as a clinician who makes media and puts information out, just sit by and be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, because it's atrocious and we need to stop. So if you want more information and you want to get away from the toxic advice and get information from a therapist who may actually know what the fuck he's talking about, like and subscribe, and we'll be making content just like this very consistently. We love you. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.